Hi there, I'm Destiny from Nifty Knittings, and today I'm going to show you how to knit the Daybreak Tee. It's a very simple tee, knit in the round from the bottom up, and then the front and back are separated and worked flat. The sleeves will be created by casting on a few extra stitches. The shoulders are finished with a 3-needle bind-off, and we will need a little bit of seaming for under the arms. For this tutorial, I'll be knitting the medium size, so make sure you're following the correct instructions for the size that you are knitting. We will be using US 6 and 7, 4 and 4.5 millimeter 32-inch circular knitting needles. The yarn we'll be using is Lion Brand Collection Cotton Jeans, which is 100% cotton, has 218 yards, 200 meters per 100 gram ball. We'll be starting with our US 6 needles and using the long tail cast on. To measure my tail, I like to wrap the working yarn around my needle about 10 times. And this is roughly how much yarn I will need for 10 stitches. Now if I hold that double, this is roughly how much yarn I would need for 20 stitches. For the medium size, I'm going to cast on 174 stitches, so I'm just going to keep doubling up my yarn until I reach roughly that amount, and that is where I will place my slip knot. Okay, this is roughly how long of a tail I'll need for 174 stitches. So I'm just going to make a slip knot here and place that on my needle. I'm going to use the long tail cast on. I like to cast on one extra stitch when I'm knitting in the round to join in the round, so I'm actually going to go to 175, but you can use whatever joining method you're comfortable with. So I have my stitches cast on, and I'm just going to check and make sure that none of them are twisted. And I do have one extra stitch, so I'm going to slip the first stitch to my right needle and slip the last stitch I cast on over that, and that's how I like to join in the round. And I'm just going to place my marker to mark the beginning of the round, and we're just going to work in a knit 1, purl 1 rib every round until the length measures 1 3/4 inch. So we're going to knit, purl, and just keep repeating this. So I finished the ribbing. I have about 1 3/4 inch, and now I'm going to switch out my US 6 needle for a US 7 for the remainder of the body. I'm using an interchangeable knitting needle set, so I'm just going to change out my right hand needle with a US 7. If you're using fixed circulars, you can just go ahead and start knitting with your US 7 needles. Okay, now for the body, we are just going to slip our marker, and we are going to work in stockinette stitch, which is just knitting every round when you're working in the round. So I'm just going to knit around until my work measures 13 1/4 inch from the very bottom cast on edge. Now I finished knitting the body, and I'm going to separate the front and the back, which will now be worked flat. So I'm going to slip half of the stitches to waste yarn to be held for the back and just work on the front stitches, knitting back and forth. So I'm just going to remove my marker, and I have my tapestry needle threaded here with some cotton yarn, and I'm just going to slip the next 87 stitches to waste yarn. You just want to slip them purlwise without twisting any of the stitches, and onto a nice smooth yarn like a cotton yarn for your waste yarn. So I've slipped all my stitches to the waste yarn, and I'm now just going to be working on the front half of the t-shirt. So to create the sleeves, we will basically be casting on a few extra stitches at either end. I'm going to use the cable cast on method to cast on 8 stitches, and this is on the wrong side, the inside of the work. Now for a cable cast on, you want to insert your right needle in between the first and second stitch, not into the first stitch. You want to make sure you're going in between the stitches. And you will bring your yarn around as if to knit. And pull that through, and then bring your left needle underneath the loop on your right needle so that it is in the proper orientation when the stitch is on your left needle. So bring your yarn around as if to knit, bring your left needle underneath that loop and place it on your needle. So make sure you're going in between the first and second stitch and grabbing the yarn, the loop from underneath. And we are going to cast on 8 stitches. I think I have 8 here. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so now we are starting on the wrong side, the inside of our t-shirt. We are going to slip this first stitch purlwise, and we're going to work a few stitches of ribbing on either side of the t-shirt. So we're going to slip the first stitch purlwise, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and then purl all the way into the end. Once we get to the other side, we will cast on another 8 stitches, and both sides will have 4 stitches of ribbing that will be maintained throughout this section. So I finished purling across, and now I'm going to cast on 8 stitches again on this side, on the right side. So again, make sure you're going in between the first 2 stitches. Bring your yarn around as if to knit, and your left needle underneath the loop and onto your left needle. In between the stitches and your left needle under. Okay, for this right side row, we are going to do our 4 stitches of ribbing again. We're going to slip the first stitch knitwise when we're on our right side row, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we are going to knit across to the last 4 stitches, and we will work those ribbing stitches, which will be a purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. So I made it to my last 4 stitches. I'm just going to continue the ribbing, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and turn my work around so the wrong side is facing. And again, we're going to slip 1 purlwise, work our rib stitches, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and then purl to our last 4 stitches again and work those rib stitches, and then we'll repeat these 2 rows once more for the medium size. Now we're ready to begin our lace setup row. So we're just going to be placing markers during this row to indicate where our lace will be repeated. So first we're going to slip 1 knitwise, work our rib stitches, so purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we are going to knit 20 stitches for the medium size. And then we will place a marker here. And then continue knitting 27 stitches. And then place our next marker. So we'll place our marker here. And then we're just going to knit 1. Oops. Place a marker, knit 1, place another marker. So this is marking our center stitch of the lace. And knit another 27 stitches, and we'll place 1 more marker. So there's our last marker, and then we'll knit 20 stitches, or until the last 4 stitches. We're going to keep maintaining our ribbed edge stitches while we work our lace design. So I've made it to the last 4 stitches, and I'm going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. So now we have our 4 stitch markers placed. We'll be working our lace design in between the 2 outside markers, and it will basically be a rectangle with a center stitch in the middle, and the lace will be worked kind of diagonally out from the middle out to the sides. And we will maintain our 4 edge stitches on either side. So the next row is a wrong side row. Again, we're going to slip the first stitch purlwise, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and purl to the last 4 stitches. Every wrong side row will be worked this way. We'll be slipping the markers as we come to them, and once we reach the last 4 stitches, we'll continue our ribbing, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. So now we're ready to begin our lace. In row 1, we're going to slip the first stitch knitwise, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we will knit to our first marker. Once we reach the first marker, we will slip it, knit 1, knit the next 2 stitches together, work a yarn over, so bring the yarn to the front, and repeat. Knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over. And we'll repeat this until we get to the next marker. We'll knit 2 together, yarn over, slip the next marker. The center stitch will always just be knit, so knit 1, slip the next marker, yarn over, and then we're going to slip, slip, knit. So I like to work my slip, slip knits a little bit differently, but do whatever you're comfortable with. I like to slip the first one knitwise, and the second one purlwise, and then put my left needle back through the front of both stitches and knit them together. So we'll yarn over again and slip, slip, knit. And repeat this until there is 1 stitch before the last marker. When you reach the last marker, we will knit one, slip the marker, and knit until the last 4 stitches and work our ribbing stitches. So we're going to purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one. In row 2, going to slip one purlwise, knit one, purl one, knit one, and purl until we reach the last 4 stitches again, and work our ribbing stitches. Make sure to slip the markers as you come to them. And work all the way to the last 4 stitches, and then we will knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. For row 3, we will start the same as row 1. We're going to slip one knitwise, purl one, knit one, purl one, and knit into our first marker. Slip the marker, and we will knit 2 stitches together. So it's a little different than row 1. We'll knit 2 stitches together, yarn over, and repeat. Knit 2 stitches together, yarn over, and continue repeating until there's 1 stitch left before the next marker. Knit 2 together, yarn over, and then we'll knit 1, slip the marker, knit our center stitch, slip marker, and then we will knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit, yarn over, slip, slip, knit, and just keep repeating yarn over, slip, slip, knit until we get to the last marker. Slip, slip, knit, slip our marker, and knit to the last 4 stitches, then work the ribbing stitches. The next row will be row 4, and that will be worked the same as row 2. So going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. So we'll just keep repeating rows 1 through 4 until the front measures 7 inches for the medium size. So my front piece now measures about 7 inches, and that's measuring from the cast on sleeve edge. So right where we cable cast on those 8 stitches. So let's just double check that. Yep, 7 inches. So at this point we are going to leave the shoulder stitches live, but bind off the middle stitches for the neck. I'll show you how we do that. So I'm just going to work my rib stitches. Knit 1, purl 1. Then I'm going to knit 26 stitches. Remove my marker. And I'll just count and see, check and see if we have 26 stitches. Okay, and now we are going to bind off 43 stitches. This is for the neck opening. So I'm going to knit 2 and pass the first stitch over the second. Whoops. There we go. Knit another one and pass this one over. And keep binding off until we have 43 stitches bound off for the medium size. So I have my center stitches bound off, and I'm going to knit another 26 stitches until our last 4 stitches. When we're finished with this row, we're just going to transfer these live shoulder stitches either to waste yarn, or you can leave them on a spare set of needles. And we'll just leave them live while we work on the back panel. And purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. There we go. And we are going to cut our yarn and just leave an extra long tail, which we can use for when we graft the shoulders together. I'm just going to slip my shoulder stitches to my US 6 needle and just keep them on there while I work the back half of the stitches. There's one shoulder. And the other shoulder. Okay, so now we'll work the back half of the t-shirt, which will be pretty similar aside from there's no lace for the back half. So a little bit easier. We have the back stitches held on waste yarn, and we're just going to go ahead and slip those onto our US 7 needle. So just slip them purlwise onto the needle. Try not to twist them, just follow the path of the waste yarn. Okay, I have all my back stitches on my US 7 needle, and I'm just going to slide out my waste yarn. And now I'm just going to join the working yarn at the back left, and we will cable cast on 8 stitches just like we did for the front. So I'm going to have the inside facing me, the wrong side. I'm going to insert my right needle right between those first 2 stitches and grab my working yarn, which isn't attached yet. I'm just going to wrap it around the needle and pull that loop through and slide that onto my left needle and then tighten it up a little bit. And go back between those first 2 stitches. Bring the yarn around the back, left needle under, and just cast on 8 stitches. Okay, I have my 8 stitches cast on, and we're starting with the wrong side. So we're going to slip the first stitch purlwise, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and purl to the end of the row. I've purled across my row, and I'm just going to turn my work around and again cable cast on 8 more stitches. So in between those first 2 stitches on my left needle, see if I can get this to focus here. In between the stitches, yarn around the back, bring the left needle under and on to the left needle. Okay, so this is row 1 of the back side, and we are going to slip the first stitch knitwise, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we'll just knit to the last 4 stitches and work our 4 rib stitches. So for the rest of the back, we'll continue working in stockinette stitch, purling on the wrong side, knitting on the right side, while maintaining our 4 rib stitches until the back also measures 7 inches. I finished my back piece, and I have bound off the center stitches just as I did for the front, and now we are ready to do a 3 needle bind off for the shoulders. So we're going to basically seam the front and back pieces together at the shoulders. We are going to need an extra US 7 needle. I have a double pointed needle here, and I'm just going to leave my front stitches on that US 6 needle. We'll just be knitting these stitches together. And we want the seam on the inside, so we're going to turn the t-shirt inside out. And line up our shoulders. You can start at either shoulder, both will be worked the same. One should still have the working yarn attached to it, and one has a long tail attached to it. So you want to hold your needles parallel in your left hand, and then with your third US 7 needle, you'll basically be knitting the front and back stitch together. So go into the front stitch knitwise, and then go into the back stitch knitwise, and bring your yarn around as if to knit, and knit those 2 together, and you can slide them off your left needle. So we'll repeat that. Go into the front stitch knitwise, into the back stitch knitwise, knit them together. Once you have 2 stitches on your right needle, you can bring the first stitch over the second to bind it off. And we will keep repeating this until all our stitches are bound off. Knit them together, pass the first one over, and repeat. So I finished binding off one shoulder, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the opposite shoulder. So I'm going to hold my needles parallel, and with my third needle, go into the front stitch knitwise, go into the back stitch knitwise, and knit them together. And then pass the first stitch over the second to bind it off. And just keep repeating this until all your stitches are bound off. So my shoulder stitches are all seamed together. And all that is left is to seam the underarm stitches. So I'm just going to flip my shirt right side out. And I like to turn it upside down to be able to see those underarm stitches a little bit better. So we're just going to be grafting these together, just like so. So I have threaded a tapestry needle, and I'm going to start by going into the edge stitch here. So if you notice, knit stitches make a little V, and on the top half I'm going to go under both bars of that V. That's right on the edge. Under both bars, and then on the bottom I'm going to go under both bars of the upside down V, so kind of the part that looks like an N. So on the top I'm going to go under both bars of the V, like so, and follow my yarn back through the same hole I came out of into the middle of the V and under the next bar. Under a V and back through the middle of a V. It's a little hard to see for the purl stitches, but there is a tiny V there. And just follow your yarn back through the same hole you came out of. Under the bars of the V, back through the center of a V. And just keep repeating this until all your stitches are seamed together. You don't want to pull too tight, you want to have a nice even tension. You can always tighten it back up when you're done before you weave in the ends. Under the V, back through the center of a V, okay, so my stitches are just about seamed. Got one more here. Okay, and that will leave you with a small gap. Got one more V here. So there is a small gap right in the middle, right at the center of the armpit. So I like to thread my tapestry needle back to the inside, pull that all the way through, and turn the work inside out. And I like to weave my needle around that opening. So right through the stitches that surround it, and then you can kind of cinch it closed. And then pull it tight to close it. And that's it. We'll do the other underarm the exact same way. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. For more patterns and tutorials, please visit niftyknittings.com.